think first and foremost, the important thing is snitching, which I think is important.
So I'm going to read them. Number one, our solidarity will be based on a respect for political diversity within the struggle for social, economic, and environmental justice. As individuals and groups, we may choose to engage in a diversity of tactics and plans of action, but are committed to treating each other with respect and working towards the common goal of peace and justice. Number two, as we plan our actions and tactics, we will take care to maintain appropriate separations of time and space between divergent tactics. Number three, we oppose any state repression of dissent, including surveillance, infiltration, disruption, limiting our actions to free speech zones and violence, or attempts to divide our movement through the conscious creation of divisions regarding tactics, organizations, strategies, and allegiances, or alliances, I'm not sure. And then last, any debate or criticism will stay internal to the movement, avoiding any public or media denunciations of fellow activists and events.
That sounds like clouds forever.
Sunset clouds will be voted on later. You can't, anyway. All right.
Tonight we're here at the GA and we're talking about endorsing the Chicago Principles, which is sort of a statement of solidarity that allows for groups in like huge sort of actions like the ones that are coming up in Chicago for the NATO G8 summits to sort of allow for ways for different organizations to work together and steer clear of each other. They were started, I believe, in St. Paul and during the RNC, and then also in Pittsburgh for the G20 protest there, I think. And so what I was arguing for is that we should certainly sort of vote for it. And the reason why has to do with a sort of distortion that has circulated in some of the disagreements. And the distortion is what I would call an occumyth. And that being that this proposal is a voting for diversity of tactics, which it is certainly not. In the language of it, it says that other groups may do diverse tactics. So it's saying that people are going to do other stuff. And that's a fact that we're not going to be able to change whatsoever. People are going to come from all over the place, and they're going to do things whether we like it or not. What this does do is create a system of sort of co-respect where we'll be like, all right, you know, we'll respect this so far as much as like you also respect us. So this is actually, to vote on this is the way to ensure that we do have a nonviolent movement, because it allows to sort of the space, a safe space around us to then make sure that we can retain those nonviolent principles that we sort of adhere to by seeming like you do your thing, we're going to do our thing, and let's steer clear. The other thing about it was there's a distortion that says that this is voting against criticizing other tactics. And I am all for criticizing tactics, debating tactics. We should be very clear politically what we do, and then we should start that debate now. But all it says is that criticisms are internal, so internal to our GAs, our forums, everywhere, and that should happen. But what it basically means is that we're not going to issue a public statement or see these things are bad to the media. And the reason why that's the case is because when they do that, they want to talk about the violent protesters. What they don't want to talk about is about the violence of the war of NATO and the violence of the poverty of G8. And when we talk about other protesters being violent, it's just to distract from the actual sort of like horrible injustice that affects all these millions of people all around the world. And like that's why we're here, to talk about those things and that violence and what we can do to stop it.
And now you're on the direct action committees and that sort of thing. There's been a lot of discussion in the media and social media about some of the tactics of other Occupy groups and other actions going on across the country right now, and particularly as regards to Black Bloc. Yeah. And what could you tell us about that, and how that would impact or not impact on Chicago?
Yeah. So I think that so a lot of the discussion thus far about sort of like Black Bloc tactics are done both on the sides of against and the sides for in a moralistic fashion. And I think that instead, sort of political tactics should be talked about in the concrete political situation of where we are now. And that this should be part of open democratic discussion within a movement. And that's how tactics should be discussed in an open democratic fashion, and with the goal of being like, so what can we do to make the movement move that one next step further, to get that just a little bit bigger, that little bit stronger. And those tactics are going to be different situations, but the best way to do that is to make sure we have open dialogue that's democratic within the movements, so that we agree upon that, and that we're all sort of like, behaving in the same way, and that sort of moralism about the tactics and the Black Bloc, just sort of they obscure the real issues, I think. That's my opinion.
And we could just affirm once more that Occupy Chicago is nonviolent. There are no...
51, 52. 55, 56.
Anyone else? Is there anyone else?
Hey! Right now! Is there anyone else who would like to vote yes
Who has not been counted?
57.
Woo! Woo!
The proposal to adopt the 4 Chicago principles as a block passes.